So, hey, how are you today?
I'm great. Great to be in Moscow. It's actually my first time here, so really excited. And
I was going to ask, is it your first time in Russia ever?
first time in Russia, first time in Moscow. So
Okay,
really
how
excited.
is it? Are you feeling safe?
Yes, I'm feeling really good. Just hoping to have a bit more time to see actually the city as well.
That's great. That's really great. So, welcome to the White Nights, and let's tell. Could you please start with telling about yourself a little bit? What's your role at Supercell? Supercell. What exactly you do? How you got there? Like, it's really interesting to learn.
Yeah. So what I do is I lead our developer relations activities, and we have a very small team working on that. So it's basically just me. And what that means is that I work on the investments we do in external studios. So we've done a bunch of investments, mostly some like early stage game startups, like I think seven investments in total. And yeah, I joined in 2013, so pretty much exactly 5 years ago. And my background is not a game developer. I'm of course always been a pretty hardcore gamer. Got my first computer in 1986, Commodore 64, and been playing games ever since.
But before the game industry, as far as I know, you worked at the bank.
Yeah, so I worked at a bank called Goldman Sachs in London. So I was doing banking there for like 6-7 years before joining Supercell.
What happened? Like you woke up one day and like, I have to make games.
Yeah, I saw the light one day and decided that I need to get out from the dark side and
Like all of us
join the good guys. No, it was really there's a lot of luck and being in the right place in the right time involved, as often happens with things in your career, so you can really plan that. But yeah, it turned out that Supercell was looking for someone like me with my profile, and also, of course, I happen to be a passionate gamer, always been playing games, so coming to Supercell was really like a dream job for me. And also, I'm originally from Finland, so going back there and having the chance to see more of my family and friends, that was a great opportunity.
Was it somehow different from what you expected? Many people think that working in games means that you basically play video games all the time, which we do, but not necessarily the games that we would like to play sometimes.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest surprises came in terms of the culture and the organization and how we work at Supercell. Of course, like Supercell was pretty successful already at that time, and I had read some articles about, Ilkka talking, our CEO, talking about our culture and the small teams and how independent the teams are and all that. But I think it was still a surprise, like how small and sort of self-driven and independent the teams really are, and compared to a big global bank where you have like 30,000 employees, you have a lot of layers of management and hierarchy and all that good stuff. So it was actually a surprise that when you are at a company like Supercell, and I'm sure like many of your studios are working the same way, so no one is telling you what to do every day. You really need to set your own agenda and find things where you can actually add value to your studio.
Yeah, sounds about right. Actually, when people ask me about the game industry and about what kind of people work there, like my first idea actually is about Ilkka, the Supercell founder, because he's like one of the most humble people I've ever met, and having a company like Supercell, which is amazing, and especially in Russia with in industries that are far away from games, it's very surprising for people that it's possible to be like that. And well, as for me, that's what I love about the video game industry. So yeah, I cannot agree more to that. Okay, let's move to the Supercell and a business more. So when Supercell was acquired by SoftBank, like there were many people that feared that it's gonna spoil the magic formula somehow, and that the company will focus on more like Chinese-oriented games, but it didn't happen. So how the transition, did you feel it at all? Did something change after all these acquisitions?
Yeah, so the SoftBank acquisition that happened in 2013, around the time I joined, and now later on. So we are now. So Tencent is our majority owner, and I think
Tencent too, yeah.
Yeah. So and yeah, it hasn't really changed at all, like how we work on a day-to-day basis or how we make games. So I think both SoftBank and Tencent, their investment approach is, first of all, it's super patient and long-term. So there's no short-term pressure coming from them in terms of trying to pressure us to make some short-term decisions that could maybe have a positive impact in the short term, but we know that in the long run they wouldn't be good for our players or for our employees or for the company as a whole. So I think Tencent's approach is really that they let us do our own thing. They are very hands-off, but they are there in the background, and if we need help with anything, then we can go to them and ask. So, but if you look at it from a game developer's perspective, I think they wouldn't have noticed any differences in the day-to-day operations.
You know, as some people say that this is a programmer's approach. If something works, just don't touch it. Let it work,
exactly.
Right? That's good. Do you think it's common for investors to have such an approach? And when Supercell acquires a studio, what's your approach to that? Like, do you bring your expertise, or do you let them work the way they do?
Yeah, I think we take actually a very similar approach, because we believe that that's the only way that can work when you're dealing with creative industries and creative people. So yeah, when we invest in a team, we come in as a shareholder, we are there as a background, and we try to help them in any way we can. But the team, they have their own culture, they have their own organization, they have complete creative freedom, they can work on whatever games they want to make. But of course, you know, we've been around for quite some time, and there's a lot of things we can also help especially the startup teams with. So, but yeah, it's very, our approach is very, very similar to how Tencent sees it as well.
Okay. Actually, when we encouraged people to ask questions to you for this Fireside chat, most of the questions were about, you know, how do you choose a studio to invest? You know, do you just give money, or do you tell them what to do? Could you just tell us a little bit, like a few words on that?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it ultimately comes down to just trying to find great teams, and usually we look for a bit more experienced teams who have been around for some time and probably have some experience about launching games and also failing to launch games, so they have seen what it takes to actually get a game out. And also I think we're looking for teams who want to have a really big impact in the market and reach millions of players and create games that can be played for years.
Everybody
years
wants that, you know.
Yeah, I know, it's not easy to find those teams.
So you were involved in like a few acquisitions, let's say, right? So how do you have this, I don't know, is it intuition, or do you look at numbers, like for example the soft launch game, or like how?
Yeah, it depends a bit on the case we are looking at, but especially if it's a startup, so quite often you don't even have a product or not even necessarily a concept or prototype, so then it's just the individuals. So then of course we meet the individuals, we talk with them, and I think one thing to mention is that actually our game developers are very involved in the investment process, so it's not only me or Ilkka or like some magic investment committee who makes the decisions. It's actually the game developers who get involved, and they sort of evaluate the teams as well and try to get a feel for the mindset of the teams and what they want to achieve and what are their goals, and how they approach game development.
Okay, speaking of that, by the way, so it's no secret that developers have a lot of power inside of Supercell, right? But at the same time, Supercell has its own style, like, right, and trademark and super high quality products. And then free-to-play is super competitive, and there is no right for a mistake. So the question is, like, do you really let developers decide that much?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you take a step back on that, so I think it comes down to what we at Supercell want to achieve, like what is our mission or vision, and I think that is trying to create games that are played by millions of players, and they are played for years to come and remembered for hopefully even longer. But I think those are pretty much the only boundaries that the developers have in the back of their heads. But I think what that means is that they are creating games that need to be at some level a pretty mass audience or approachable and accessible. And on the other hand, if we want to reach those players, we need to be able to market them, so do user acquisition, brand marketing, and whatnot. And that requires that the games can also be viable from a business perspective. And right now we feel that mobile free-to-play is the platform where you can actually achieve that. You can reach masses of players, and you can also make them viable from a business perspective. But other than that, we don't really have any strict boundaries or guidelines for the developers. It's more that it's in their DNA that when they make games, and there's a lot of innovation you can do within those boundaries in terms of the gameplay or meta or social features and all that. So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard for me to actually accept that, being a control freak as I am, especially with the organizing stuff. There is you have to think about all the little detail, and you have to control everything. So given so much power and freedom, I think it's cool, but it's really hard to imagine that it actually works like that. Yeah, so it's...
Yeah, and it's actually, now that you mention it, it's when we recruit new people, and of course many of them, they have seen all the sort of articles and stories about Supercell, but every time when they come in and then they've been there at Supercell maybe 1 or 2 months, and then they come to Ilkka or someone else, and hey, I was actually so surprised that it actually is like that. That's how you work, and teams are small and independent, and no boundaries in a way.
Yeah. I was so surprised to see our bank account, so much money. Great job, guys. That's the best surprise you can ever get. Does anyone have a question? We can take a few. Можно по-русски спросить, если что, мы переведем.
Yeah, you can ask your questions in English. We have our translators in place.
I have 2 T-shirts in my bag for good questions.
Finally! So we have T-shirts from Supercell for those who are brave enough to ask their questions. But okay, let's wait until the last minute, as we usually do. Speaking about the teams and the freedom and stuff, we have a question. Егор, we have a question. В той стороне. As soon as you have some rewards.
Hello. How many teams you acquired for last maybe half year or year, and how many teams in case right now in production?
Yeah. So in terms of the investment, so we've done 2 investments this year. So one of them we did in January. It was a startup called Trailmix, who are based in London, and it was founded by a couple of people who left from King's London studio, so they were early employees there, and they wanted to set up their own thing and work in a more sort of startup environment again and start doing their own product. So we came in as a very early stage, so a seed investment. And the second one we've done this year is a studio called Redemption Games. They are based in Carlsbad, which is near San Diego in California, and the core team. They created a puzzle game called Cookie Jam back in the day. Some of you might remember it. It was launched, I think, in 2014. But they also wanted to sort of get to the startup mode again and set up their own team. And again, we are an early investor in that. So they're working on they are puzzle game experts. So they're working on a new puzzle game that is actually in soft launch right now. Yeah, what was the other part of the question? Sorry.
Discussions, a new discussion, and how many these discussions right now? And I mean, if you had 2 teams for last year, how long it usually takes to make this agreement with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think right now, of course, there's a lot of discussions going on all the time, and some of them will never lead anywhere. But I think we have probably 2 really more active cases right now, and I think in terms of the startup investment, it doesn't take that long to get them done. It's maybe, I would say, 1.5, 2 months from start to finish, and it's a pretty quick process in the end. Of course, if it's a bigger deal. Like we've done a couple of majority investments as well, like for example, Space Ape in London. And when you have 100 employees and the company has been around for 3-4 years, then there's a lot more history, and then means also that the deals are usually a bit more complex. So then I would say maybe like 3 months or 3-4 months.
Would it be open to consider a studio from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, why not?
Is there a way to apply somehow?
Yeah, you can just email me. So it's jaakko.harlas@supercell.com, and I'm happy to set up a call or meet you to discuss.
All right, so if anyone wants to get invested by Supercell, here's the guy.
And also we're recruiting, so if there's any good coders or artists out there who want to move to Helsinki, please apply.
All right. Speaking about the team, I was going to ask, do you have any KPIs set for the team? So, like, yeah, it's one thing to know about the boundaries, like the basic idea, but do they have like specific KPIs, and do you share them between the different teams?
Yeah, in terms of the targets, the teams don't have like super specific KPI targets that they would have. It's more that the teams get together maybe once a year to do a slightly longer and bigger roadmap, and that's more. It's not about like, hey, we need to hit like this X ARPDAU this year or increase revenue by 10% or whatnot. It's more like about the direction and the vision where they want to take the game on a slightly longer term, because how the development cycles work, as you know, it's usually the team is super focused on the next update, and that's maybe happens, every month or every second month, and that's what they're super focused on, and they know what features they want to put in. But then it's also good to once in a while take the step back and look at it from a higher perspective and think about where do you want to take the game over the next year or 2 years. So what the teams do is that they might have a vision for, let's say, Clash of Clans, that during the next year we want to make Clash the best clan experience on mobile, for example. And so that's the like high-level goal, and then they start breaking it down into sort of smaller goals, but not that much like in terms of the KPIs.
How do you evaluate like what's the best clan games? Like do you, like retention wise or money wise or like just the feeling? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it could be engagement, like how many people are active in clans, and also like being active in a clan means that your retention will be also better because you have a reason to come back into the game. So I guess there's a few ways you could try to measure that. And of course, in free-to-play game, the more you play and the longer you stay in the game, that also increases the probability that you might monetize at some point, especially if you have a good reason and you feel that there's some value you're getting out of that.
Do you have some focus groups before releasing a new feature, or it's just you have like huge audience, right? Do you release them on all the audience?
Yeah, so we do. First of all, we do like company playable. So when there's a prototype, the team usually puts them out to like every Supercell employees to be played, and they ask feedback from everyone. So that's of course one focus group in a way, but of course
most loyal.
Yeah, but it's also a pretty biased focus group, because if you have a lot of hardcore passionate gamers, then the feedback might not be completely sort of neutral. So I think some teams, what they do is they use some third-party vendors, for example, Playtest Cloud. Some of you might have used that, where you can get a focus group, and then you can actually get like gameplay videos where the people are playing your game, and you can see their reactions, and they are sort of live commentating on that and giving feedback on that. So I think that's one valuable way of getting like real user feedback, and usually how the teams see it is it's like a good validation of, are you going in the right direction, or are you going completely in the wrong direction? But yeah.
There are a lot of stories about how Supercell celebrates failures with champagne, sparkling wine in the office whenever something goes wrong. Can you tell us about, first of all, if this is true or not? And second, can you tell us about one maybe recent project that was killed and why?
Yeah, maybe about the sort of champagne myth. So yeah, we do it, but I think it's not necessarily
another reason to drink, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, you never need a good reason to drink champagne. That's true. Yeah, but I think one thing to stress is that not so much celebrating the failure. It's more to celebrate the learnings you get from that. So whenever let's say we kill a game, then the team gets up and gives a post-mortem, and then we toast to the learnings that are then shared across the company. But maybe one example from the recent months is that there was a team who were working on a prototype. It was still pretty early stage, maybe 4 months in development, and then there was another team who had been working on their game for a bit longer, so maybe 8 months or close to a year, and they were sort of approaching a bigger milestone. Let's call it like an alpha milestone, and they were like really crunching to get it done, and they realized that they just don't have enough coders and artists on the team, that they need some help. I think they were like the whole team was like six people at the time. So what then happened is that the smaller team, like who was still at the early stage, they sort of heard that the other team is struggling a bit, and they just decided that, hey, it's the best thing for Supercell and everyone if we just, we shelve our game for now and we join the team who is trying to sort of crunch to that big milestone. And so they put their own game on hold. It's not sure if it's completely killed, though, but they will probably get back to it at some point.
But they drank champagne anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So and I think we have this saying that Supercell first, team second, individual last, and that sort of crystallized in that moment, that the team just thought that it's the best thing for the company to just join that team and try to help them get to over the finish line.
Supercell first, team second, individuals third.
Yeah.
All right, someone has to tweet that. Okay, thanks. Do we have one more question? We do. Okay, we'll ask the third one, and then you'll have to fight for the T-shirts.
Hey, so looking forward, what are you seeing, or what are you guys seeing at Supercell in terms of the trends, where the industry is headed in terms of genres, and are there any particular new platforms, new technologies that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, I think the beauty of the mobile industry and games industry as a whole is that I think it's super hard to predict. So I think the only thing we can do is try to innovate, be it in gameplay or meta, and try to make games that people love playing. But it's, of course, there's always a lot of luck involved. So I think it's just super hard to predict what will be the next big thing. In terms of other platforms, I think, as I mentioned, I think we still see a lot of potential on mobile, and mobile free-to-play is still the platform where we see the most opportunity just because of the sheer scale. But we are keeping an eye out on the other platforms as well, and so I wouldn't rule out that if there's a really amazing team who's working on a concept that could be, for example, multi-platform, that it could work both on mobile and PC console, that could be interesting to us. In terms of VR, AR, I think probably in the same boat as many of the other big studios, that it just feels too early for us. It just doesn't seem yet to be viable as a consumer platform. So I think VR will become big first in a sort of B2B or enterprise scenario before it reaches the same level of popularity as mobile or PC, for example.
Yeah, I'm going to make it more difficult for you as we're running out of time. So I'm going to ask my last question on stage, but guys, you'll be able to ask more afterwards. So speaking about platforms, genres, so if you had $1 million, well, you probably do, but just a spare $1 million, and you had to choose one genre, one platform of the game to invest it into, so what would it be?
Yeah, that's a really tough one, and I think
know.
I'm going to dodge that question a bit. So I think what I would probably do is split that into 10 investments of 100K and just invest them in really amazing teams who have some unique angle or whatever twist that might be that is somehow different than what's in the market right now. But I think, yeah, just game investing is.
That's why you are responsible for investment,
Exactly.
because that was a very smart answer, I think.
Yeah, game investing is a bit crazy because it's just so unpredictable. So the only thing you can do is try to increase the probability of success a bit by trying to find those great teams.
Okay, stay hungry, stay foolish, and try and make better games, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to the White Nights, and we hope to see you during the day. And so 2 T-shirts, one goes to Steven, and the other one to that gentleman who asked the first question. Thank you very much.